Hi everyone, I'm Foxx, your host with the most fur, here with another video today. Old man yells at digital cloud. Right? I don't know. I'm in my 40s, but to some people that's pretty old. When you get to my age, it doesn't feel that old unless if you're, my back, and things like that, but. So when it comes to gaming, I've been around for a very long time. Since about the beginning, more or less. I'm not like Atari old, but uh, at the age of 9, I had a Nintendo Entertainment System for Christmas. I was the happiest kid ever. I also had the original Game Boy that year, and I've been kind of gaming ever since. I've been around for quite a while. And I see a lot of discussions a lot of the time about the modern gaming and the state we're in and where we're heading. And, some of this stuff actually worries me just a little bit. Nintendo Switch 2, right? A lot of people tell me it's not a big deal with the cart keys and stuff. And I guess I have to admit that I'm a little bit old in this generation, right? I come from a time where, video games were tangible on the disc or on the cartridge, and they were essentially yours. And, I'm not oblivious to the fact that all we've ever owned, right, when we bought games was the license of access, whether that be the cartridge, the disc, download, what have you. So, it's not like we actually bought the actual games themselves, which means, duplication, even, you know, ripping your ROM, off your cart probably is a little bit of a gray area, but it's still you're not supposed to duplicate it, man. You're not supposed to make copies. Um, the old FBI warning on before you watch a DVD or a VHS back in the day. Some of you might be going, "What's a VHS?" And you're making this old fox feel very old. It was this thing that you put in a VCR and sometimes put in a rewinder. Yes, you had to rewind VHS tapes. It was a pain, but it was cool. No. But anyways, that old FBI warning, case in point, was basically them telling you you don't own the media. You just own the license of access for private use. And as we head further down the line to this digital kind of age, right? It's no secret that Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox, all of them are just they would love it if we went all digital, probably. It saves them money to make and print discs. It's just, the way it seems to be heading. But I got some concerns, right? At least with a disc or a cartridge that had the full game on it, how long that access of license or license to access was up to me. When it comes to digital formats, it's becoming increasingly clear that it's up to the publisher or the corporation behind it. And, there's a lot of topics and initiatives like Stop Killing Games and stuff to help kind of, protect the consumer part of it. They're not doing this to convenience us. They're doing it to save money, okay? Don't even, try to defend that. But I guess what I'm getting at is because I'm older and I've been around such a long time into the gaming atmosphere, I'm used to these sort of things, you know. I'm used to full games being on the cartridge. And since the PlayStation 3, PS4, now PlayStation 5, Series S and X, and Switch and all that, um, they're still physical, the stuff, right? But it's not always what you'd want it to be. For example, Fallout 76, very okay game, but it's very online, you know. Most physical collectors will understand that Fallout 76 isn't going to be completely on the disc being an online game, right? Like Helldivers 2 is going to be dependent on your internet connection. And there's also, you know, other games that release at first digitally and then they release a physical disc later. But a lot of what Xbox does too, especially with Starfield and stuff, is that they don't have the full game on the disc. You have to download it, or you know, it's more like a what do you call it? A code, right? A download code, but in a physical format, which is weird. And we argued about that back then, and it's not like we suddenly stopped when it comes to Switch 2 kind of doing this thing, right? Like Switch 2 games, first party, do generally have the full game on the cartridge. But third parties usually go out for that cart key, right? The little game cart key that is essentially, like I said, a download code, except it's on a physical piece of plastic, which to me makes it pretty much pointless to own. Now, I understand that Nintendo servers can be still live for a very long time. Even the 3DS and the Wii U shops, those might be closed for as far as buying new games, but when you're downloading games you already own, you can still do that as far as I know. And I expect, you know, 10 years down the line, Switch and Switch 2 will allow you to do the same thing, even if they should cut off the service, you know, to buy new Switch and Switch 2 games, which, you know, seems counterproductive, but whatever. But my worry is, as a collector and a gamer, as I am, if I buy this cartridge, right, this cart key, how do I know that I'll always have access to that game? And it's a lot of, you know, it's something to think about, man. Like, I collect PlayStation 3 as well. And I've had games that have gone delisted before. And I can't even download the DLC for it anymore. Like in some cases, like Jump Force. I cannot download the DLC at all. No Seto Kaiba or any additional characters. I just have uh, the download still downloaded. I can still play it whenever, but I don't have access to that DLC, nor can I purchase it or get it for free. Nothing. Just poof, lost to the ether, right? The digital ether. And, you know, people talk about the crew. I never personally bought the crew, but people are upset about that because they bought the crew game, and now that Ubisoft pulled the plug, no more game, right? This is what I'm worried about when it comes to Switch 2 carts, especially from third parties. You know, down the line, am I still going to have a game? And, you know, what if even Nintendo games get too big and they start, you know, doing the cart keys for those too, right? Or the key carts. Then we have a whole generation that like it just isn't preserved because it's very anti-piracy, but it's also a little bit at the expense of the consumer. I get Nintendo's point of view. The Switch was highly emulated on PC and other devices, and it was a problem. In some cases, people would find the ROM of a game days before it's out, months or a month or so. So it's a tricky wicket. So to combat that, they don't have the whole game on the cart anymore, which would make piracy a little bit more difficult. And, tampering with the Switch to the device itself can actually, I hear, block your console or brick it. So don't try to hardware modify those if you're out getting one. But my main point is that like it really kind of sucks because as a collector, I like to collect games for my future. For my future, like I want to be playing these old PlayStation 3 games, PS4 games, PS5 games, Xbox games, Switch games, etc. when I'm an older man, older than I am now. Some of you might say I look pretty old, but bear with me. As long as I'm able to pick up a controller, right, I'm gonna want to be able to play video games. And I want to have that library, right? And I do. I have quite the collection. I've shown you guys just about all of it. Like, I could still make more sorts in the future of other, smaller games that, like, nobody really cares about. But, yeah, I got a pretty big collection, and I do plan to play them all and enjoy them when I'm old. But at this point, I'm starting to wonder how much I can enjoy in 20 years when I'm like 60. Or even further, 70, 80 years old, if, Lord willing, right? So I'm not really complaining. Like, I get it, but I also realize how time has moved on in a way, too. Like, the gaming industry has evolved from when I was a kid, not just in terms of graphics or technology, but how the medium is, addressed. Like, we talk about games as a service like it's the bane against gaming, but you got to think about these kids that are growing up today, right? These little kids, they didn't grow up when we did. They don't understand what it was like before the internet, before TikTok, and before YouTube. So they're brought up in the norm of subscriptions like Game Pass and PS Plus and NSO, and they're brought up with games like Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft. These real big, memeable, games that they follow. So they might not be even thinking about preservation like we do. When we argue about the Switch 2 cartridges being, just glorified CD keys, they kind of respond like, well, what's the problem? Just download it, right? You can download it now, so play it now. They're not thinking that far ahead in the future. And it bugs me too, a little bit, that people say, this is the future. Like, the future, if the future is nothing but stagnated subscription services, like what we did with Netflix, then the future sucks. We laughed when that guy from Ubisoft or whatever was like, you won't own your games and you'll be happy. Well, I won't be. Personally, me, if they ever do just go with the whole digital route, no more physical, you got to download every game. It's all up to them on how long that service lasts or how long that license lasts. I'm cutting out. Simple as that. It's not like PlayStation 5 down has any, shortage of games. I could live comfortably and die comfortably playing just PlayStation 5 on downward comfortably for the rest of my days. I'm cool with that. And, kids won't care or understand the difference. They'll just keep doing what kids do, only they'll be adults one day. So it's like that realization that, like, I'm getting old. you know, uh, for me, it's hard to accept that PlayStation 3 is even considered retro. I don't even consider PS2 all that retro. Like, I consider that the where stuff started getting really good. Like, Nintendo to Super Nintendo and Sega was a big step forward, but games were still kind of like, a pastime. It's not like you really ever beat them too much. Some kids did, some people were talented and made it the way through. I personally only beat a handful of RPGs, and I never really got around to beat Mario when I was a kid, or Ninja Gaiden or any of that, and Ninja Turtles and stuff. And if anybody says they beat that as like, an 8-year-old or whatever, I'd say you're full of it, man. That game was hard. They even had a name for that. NES hard, right? And then Sega Genesis, Sega does what Nintendo don't and all that stuff. Blast processing. I was that kid. I was a Sega kid once that came out. Sonic the Hedgehog was where it was at. It was the lit, cool thing, Sega was like for us older kids, not, Nintendo nerds. That was more for kiddos. But yeah, and then we got to the N64 age, right? And I'm like playing Pilot Wings 64 for the first time. 13 years of age, by the way. My son is 13 now. So, put that in perspective that, like, when I was 13, things were quite a bit different. We had N64, PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, I guess. Some people were burnt out by the Sega Saturn by that point, 32X and stuff. It got confusing for Sega, man, especially in North America. So Saturn wasn't all that big for me, anyways, that I remember. Is all the N64 and the PlayStation 1. PlayStation 1 was what the adults were getting for Metal Gear Solid, Twisted Metal, games like that. N64 was more for the party gamers, like the people who like the couch co-op, play 007 or Perfect Dark, things like that. Smash Brothers, Mario Kart 64, like it was the party machine. Then later we got on the GameCube and PS2 and Xbox started making a scene. I remember too. I was like, Microsoft entering in console thing? That won't last, Such comments didn't age well, obviously, but Xbox was kind of like the new kid on the block. You weren't too sure about him, but you knew the PlayStation 2 was great and it played DVDs. So most people opted for the PS2. And a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for the GameCube now, but realistically back then, it was kind of considered like, the goofy little cousin to what everybody else was doing. Like PlayStation 2 had like, the Final Fantasy X, Black, Twisted Metal Black, Metal Gear Solid 2, Dragon Ball Z Budokai, and the Tenkaichi series. 6 games of Budokai, man, that was great. Devil May Cry. That's why I mean that, like, the PlayStation 2 was kind of like a hot era where graphics started really coming along. Then you had the PlayStation 3, which is the first HD era for the most part that went a little bit more towards the online functionality. And that's where I started noticing in my collection that stuff started getting a little fuzzy as far as ownership goes. I worry all the time that, like, I have this collection of PlayStation 3, but I don't have nearly enough hard drive space to install it all. So, like, it's kind of confusing, right? And, to keep it updated and everything. And I don't even know if half of them work at this point. But I do plan to play all my PlayStation 3 games. So there's that. I should play it now while servers are still up and stuff, but basically I have to, as a collector of PlayStation 3 and have a PlayStation 3 as well as a 4 and a 5, but the thing I have to look out for is that, like, I have to count on, like, modders in the future to keep these things live. Like, if I wanted to keep the updates up to snuff whenever I need them, like when I pop in the disk install and I need to update it to, a playable state, it's going to be difficult without modders and additional servers if Sony ever decides to, just and plug it out. And on top of the game I mentioned, Jump Force, which is delisted, I also have on my hard drive Marvel's Avengers. And I know a lot of people didn't like that game, and that's fine. I actually kind of liked it. I mean, the end game loop was kind of whatever, but the main story modes, it kept me busy. It kept me liking Marvel and, all that jazz. And I have it completely up to date on my PlayStation 4 now. I'm hoping that, in the future I can still play it as is. Lord forbid that my PlayStation 4 should ever stop working. I'm worried that if I ever had to reinstall it, I won't be able to get all the characters that I unlocked, right? All the DLC additional content. So as a collector, I worry about this sort of thing. Like, what happens when they just, pull the plug, man? It's gonna suck. And the future's gonna suck if it's all digital, because at least now we have emulation and backups, but in the future, we might not be so lucky because these digital storefronts might be so tightly locked and anti-piracy that, preservation just kind of kicks the bucket at the whims of corporations. So that's my main rant of sorts. I get why the industry is heading to where it is. There's a lot of money in games as a service. Everybody wants that Fortnite, that their own Fortnite, just a money printing machine. Like they're freaking Rockstar with GTA Online and stuff. It's at the end of the day, it's a business. It's all about the money. But I also see it as a weird flex when Xbox now, the very people who gave us the 360 and were giving Sony quite the fight back then, is now kind of like Xbox as a console is kind of secondary to the subscription, and I think that's kind of lame. When everything's an Xbox, what's an Xbox? My TV is an Xbox apparently now. My cell phone is an Xbox right now. My RG slide is an Xbox right now. My cell phone is a Xbox. My computer is an Xbox. It kind of like feels like they lost a bit of their identity, which also worries me too. Like, I'm hoping that, you know, some innovation or some peripheral comes out in the future to where the future doesn't suck. Like, I don't want gaming to turn into the Netflix of gaming, right? Because then we would have like 50 other subscription services that we're all subscribed to, and we're paying more for them than we ever did video games themselves. And they're all Scrooge McDucking with their, you know, swimming in their freaking, you know, money they're making off of us. Ha ha ha! You thought you owned your games. Nope. So this is my concerns. And, you know, you guys are free to voice your opinions too. Like, do you worry about the same thing? Are you not that concerned? I mean, after all, I suppose, you know, we should play these games while they last, while they're active, while they're, you know, supported, instead of hoping and banking that they'll be playable and supported later on, you know? But like I said, maybe this is just an old man yells at digital cloud situation and, you know, things like that. So, anyways, thanks for listening to me babble on about my past with gaming and, you know, my gripes with the industry and stuff. And I'm trying to be chill here, you know, chill vibes and stuff. Um, Maybe you guys can give me some tips to help further preserve my collection so I have less to worry about. And let me know what you guys think. What's your vision for the future of gaming? Because my vision of the future of gaming would be something like Sony completely blows our mind with like freaking like AR glasses, right? Like you see those Google lenses and meta frames and stuff. Like, what if we attributed that to gaming, right? Like visual HUDs that only we can see, or you know, increasing depth to old games. Like that would be really cool, I think. And you know, alternate reality glasses or augmented reality glasses would be the logical next step without investing so hard into virtual reality. But especially if we could take these AR glasses on the go, right, and game on the go with them, there's some frames out there that you can connect USB C to your Switch, your Portal, and other things, and it gives a display as big as your environment. So if you're looking at the wall or you're at a football game, your screen will appear as big as the football field. Like, you imagine that, 100-yard screen. We have the technology. So if Sony capitalized on that, imagine it, man. Like, you know, Sony's got that music industry, the movie industry, the gaming industry. They compacted it in and made alternate or AR the big thing, the big grab. I think that would really hit the future in a way that we should be heading, even if we got rid of physical media, right? At least then we would have a proper trade off, like saying, this is the future of gaming, man. This is alternate reality. It's not VR, but it's a good stopgap to consider and think about. But that's my vision of the future of gaming. You know, the next big step. I'm not looking forward to the idea of just always online, always subscriptions, digital only games. It kind of hits me in the nerd feels, you know. It doesn't sit right. But anyways, thanks for listening to me jab. If you like the song at the opening, please check out my main channel, Foxx. I do all my music and all of my various videos there somewhat sporadically. I'm going to try to be more active on this channel, Foxx Play Gaming, because gaming is my passion next to writing. So look forward to Tuesday videos like this one, and in the future, and Thursday videos will be old streaming videos. Right now, Dark Souls 2 will be the main thing. Like, after you watch this on Tuesday, you'll probably see on Thursday me taking on like old Iron King or something, from our Return to Drainlick event. So be on the lookout for that. And I think October or November we're going to be doing Demon Souls Return to that. So that will be cool. So look out for more, videos like this. And, I will try to stream at 3 times a week. If I don't, I don't mean to disappoint, but, sometimes life gets in the way. I do have a life. I do have other things besides YouTube. I know. Right? So let me know what you guys think, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.